Thank you, Alexandra, for coming today. Yeah, and joining me. Let's begin with your background. How did you get in crypto, and how did you get into YouHodler?
So I worked in fashion design and operations and manufacturing for a decade, got bored, became a lawyer, and moved to Switzerland during COVID and took an LLM in international business law and cross-border comparative law. And from there, I ended up working with an alumni of the same program who was the general counsel at YouHodler. And so I have now been with YouHodler since 2021, working on regulations and policy in the crypto space. And now I'm head of anti-money laundering at the platform.
Interesting. And I know for a fact that while a lot of people are so much focused on MiCA, you have a lot to say about DORA.
Yes, I do. So we've all had quite a lot of discussion about MiCA, but as myself and some of the other panelists brought up today, DORA is very critical, and I think a lot of people have underestimated the impact that it will have on their businesses. The critical thing with DORA is that you can hire the best external counsel in the world, and they can't write your internal cybersecurity procedures for you. They don't know your tech stack. They don't know your escalation trees. They don't know how your engineers are handling incident responses. And likewise, you can have a brilliant engineer or a brilliant cybersecurity team, and they probably won't have the skill set of writing regulator readable documents that clarify those processes. And so what we have now is quite a disconnect. And this is 90 plus policies and procedures that need to go into incredible depth and not just be a piece of paper. They're actually living documents that need procedures that need to actually be being carried out and validated. So it's a huge burden, especially for startups. And really the only institutions I think are at the level of preparedness are large financial institutions like banks, because DORA doesn't just apply to crypto, it also applies to traditional financial intermediaries across Europe. And so I don't think the crypto industry is prepared, even with our higher standards of cybersecurity, because we're actively fighting off threats from the Lazarus group. And I think most exchanges have digital operational resilience, but do they have the documentation? I think that there's a serious underestimation of how much work this is really going to be.
Interesting. So what's something unexpected can happen, right? Because a lot of people may not be prepared for it, right? As you mentioned. What something unexpected could be?
Well, DORA's been in force since January, and DORA has pretty significant fines, and real nasty breaches could lead to liability and even penalties, like we're talking penalties like breaching GDPR. And also, fundamentally, if a European NCA finds you in breach of DORA, and that will be a very easy one for them to go after people for, because I think most places are going to be underperforming on there. There's going to be a regulatory pileup. It's not like the regulator in Singapore will turn around if your exchange has had a critical failure on the cybersecurity front in Europe, that they're not going to come in and penalize you. Realistically, your customers will be alarmed. Your other regulators will be alarmed. It's a potential VASP killer.
Interesting. What else should we be aware of?
I think the thing within Europe, everyone's been sort of focusing on MiCA, but we have this quite blinkers view where we're focusing on one thing at a time, when really we have to bear in mind things like the crypto asset reporting framework is coming in. That's a huge logistical challenge for any exchange. You're going to have to work out there's no standardization of formats across CARF. That's not something that they've imposed. So every single national tax authority has their own formatting standards and their own requirements. And you have to work out exactly what those are for every jurisdiction you're operating in. And then that, just logistically, on your reporting team, that is a huge amount of work. And you'll also need to change your onboarding processes, if you're not necessarily collecting all the fields that you will need for the tax reporting form. You'll need to pull in, therefore, your UX team. You will need to communicate this to customers. So that's just one example, and that's just tax reporting. We also have the co-application of PSD2 and MiCA, of MiFID and MiCA. We have regulations incoming from the UK, from the US, Australia. So really, crypto is global, and the regulators aren't going to sync up conveniently for us. So it's keeping your eye on all of those balls, or working out which of your jurisdictions are basically not worth the effort, because there will be some where you will just have to cut loose unless you're willing to basically hire a tax specialist and a legal team for every jurisdiction in the world.
And what about the rivalry in the field?
Well, this is always special, and we see different jurisdictions rise and fall. We saw Switzerland dominating, and then Dubai dominating. Singapore was strong for a while, but then they introduced regulations which pulled back a lot on their global influence. Hong Kong was huge for a while, but then they turned away from retail clients. And we see a lot of panic and responses to certain events that you don't get necessarily in the same way in other industries. So we have this rivalry, but even regulators that are attempting to be crypto friendly can sometimes introduce legislation that isn't, even with the best intentions, just from misunderstanding of how the products work, or poor communication, or lobbyists intervening, or just mix-ups. There's contradictions in the legislation. We have MiCA finally passed through after years of debates and slowly crawling through. And then a few months ago, you have the European Data Protection Authority basically saying that all Layer 1 blockchains are illegal under GDPR. So you have the European Commission working hard on MiCA on the one hand. You have the European Data Protection Authority totally undermining what they've just spent a long time legislating. And well, who wins? So even when people are trying to progress and sort of unify, you can have communication issues, and that's not just in the problem with one regulator, that's globally.
Could you please elaborate on the ways this could be effectively tackled?
I think we need a lot of education, both internally as an industry. We need to educate people on DORA requirements, educate our engineers on writing policies, educate our lawyers on understanding cybersecurity processes, and then educate the regulators as we're innovating and creating new technology and what it actually does, which technologies that already exist it's the most similar to, where it differs from existing technology where it could be seen similar. So there's a lot of communication that's necessary. At the moment, we are sort of all in silos, and that's really the problematic thing, is that we need to get better at working together. And we've started seeing this, like we've started seeing in the US. So there were a lot of companies coming together to try and push the Genius Act, but it really took a long time for them to all start coordinating. You need rivals in the same room. You need people who are in fierce competition for users to work together. And like that's what the issues with travel protocols have been. We have Coinbase sponsoring trust and having to come and sit down in the room with some of their fiercest rivals and actually work out how we can share information compliantly. So we need a lot more of that, and not just related to the travel rule. It's got to be across ESG, the use of AI, where is it ethical to use AI in the compliance process? We have to work that out together as an industry. That's not like a moral decision that should be taken individually in separate boardrooms. We need standards. Otherwise, how is the consumer going to compare? And how is like one lawyer in your legal team going to make such a huge decision? It's really, we need a lot more communication, a lot more education.
that sounds like a really, really good call to action. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.